you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ashland Board of Selectmen meeting for November 7th, 2018. Is there anyone here who's recording other than WACA-TV? Just let us know. Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm going to ask Mark, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Would you be willing to do that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. All right. Just vision statement. Joe, do you want to read the vision statement?
Sure, I'd be happy to, because that's what the problem I have is my vision. The vision statement, the town of Ashland will be prosperous and physically sound community with a full range of housing, business, cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities in a safe and attractive environment for all residents and visitors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mission statement. Steve, you want to do the mission
Sure,
statement?
just bear with me, I don't have the large type version here, so. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management, advocating for sustainable development and growth, and providing excellent municipal services which will enhance the quality of life in our diverse community. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is committed to providing clear goals and objectives for town management and creating effective engagement and public participation with residents, state legislators, and other elected officials in order to achieve our mission.
Okay, thank you. And just wanted to note, of course, we had big election day yesterday. It was a great turnout, and just wanted to note that. And of course, it's I think a great benefit to us all that the public safety building was passed overwhelmingly. So I wanted to thank the residents who supported it and the town staff and the other members of the board who supported it and worked on it for so many years. Especially, I think, you know, our town manager and the chiefs worked very hard on this. So I just wanted to note that. So thank you all for your support, and I don't know if other members wanted to just comment.
I think it's important also to make note of the poll workers. They had a horrendously long day yesterday and did yeoman's work, so, you know, kudos to the town clerk's office and all the volunteers that spent many hours at the high school, so thank you.
I'll save my comments for the
Okay.
board reports.
Very good, thank you. All right, so we're a little late, but I want to, I'm going to announce a public hearing for a street layout hearing for Royal Colony Road. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a layout hearing for Royal Colony Road, plan dated October 9, 2018. This plan is subject to modifications as per the Planning Board. A public hearing will be held on the matter at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. On Wednesday, November 7, 2018 at 7:05 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard in this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Selectman's Office, Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. Signed, Rob Scheer, Chairman. All right, anyone in favor, speaking in favor of this street layout hearing for Royal Colony Road? Just come up and identify yourself and your association with the layout hearing.
Paul Beatty, I'm the attorney for the Fafford organization, here tonight presenting the petition that the planning board is behind. There was a punch list that was prepared. Virtually all the items are done. Mr. Pizzeri, who was with me, has worked years on this, and again, we are fully cognizant that to our recollection and to our knowledge, and we believe to GCG's knowledge, who is the town's engineering consultant, that everything is done. There is one minor issue that we want to work with the planning board on. We've offered a $2,000 cash bond for a minor puddling at 1 or 2 driveways, and we're willing to come back. Again, it's getting late in the year, And that we'll post that money in escrow until the infrared procedure that we believe is needed, and it's a minor procedure, is completed in the spring. And we've made that offer to the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, hold on a second. So, anyone else speaking in favor? Any other details? Okay. Anyone opposed to this or has questions? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Dayo Oshimboni. I live at number 16 Royal Colony Circle.
Okay.
Two issues here. I don't think the work is deemed complete. The last time we were here, he just mentioned about the puddling. There is puddling that occurs in front of my driveway whenever it rains. It's significant, and we mentioned it last time we came. That hasn't been addressed. I think because of the relationship we've had, I think it's best that this be done before the road gets handed over. Second issue here is on the circle. We were here the last time. There was weeds and it wasn't properly done. So we requested that landscape fabric be laid, because we are of the understanding that it will be the town's responsibility once it's handed over. So I think as a people, we're all looking for something that requires very little maintenance. So what Farfad has done is, I believe they've laid the landscape fabric,
Yeah.
but they've sprinkled mulch on it. I have pictures on my phone. It has barely been a week or maybe 2 weeks that's been laid. If we're thinking about long-term longevity of that space, I think you need to lay a certain amount of depth of mulch that will withstand rain and what may. It's sprinklings. If you go walk on the circle now, you can see the landscape fabric all over the place. It's not covered in mulch. I think we had discussed, or we had requested that they entertain the thought of maybe putting stones. We made the request to the planning board.
I see.
I think the issue with putting more mulch on that space is the depth, the height of the paving of the circle is not that. If you put extra mulch, I think it will fall into the street. I don't think the paving is high enough to take as much. So even if they added more mulch, I think it will require a few more times for it to rain and things will wash over.
Oh, right.
So I don't think that's complete in any sense. I think at the end of the day, we'll think about, as a town, especially if the responsibility is going to fall on the town, let's do it best now. Let's plan for success so that everybody can touch that space minimally.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do we have a response to that? As a town, are these issues that we should consider before we accept it? Does this come under the purview of what we're?
I would think this would come under the purview of the planning board.
So,
Because this is the first that we've made aware of it. The gentleman said that he was here, but he wasn't in front of our board. You were probably in front of the planning board,
well,
sir.
I see
Okay.
Preston's
We do have the
approaching.
chair of the
Yeah,
planning board.
so let's hear from Preston.
Preston Crowe, Chair of the Planning Board. Everything the gentleman said is correct. There was a lot of concern that the landscaping situation on the island in the middle of the cul-de-sac was inadequate, and that it would soon be just weeds. So the solution was to put down landscaping fabric that prevents the weeds from coming up, and they did that. And that was, this was something that was done, I believe, after our final hearing, or immediately before, like that day or the day after, I don't remember for certain. And when it was done initially with the mulch on top of it, it looked nice. If it's not holding up, then, I'm not sure what the right remedy is to make it look nice, but eventually, if this doesn't get fixed before the town accepts it, as the gentleman said, it becomes the town's responsibility, and I don't think the town has a good history of maintaining these kinds of things. So if there's something you would like them to do, I would have no objection to your saying, this needs to be fixed, and if you've got a good idea, that's fine.
Preston, if I may, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead.
if I may, when this came in front of your board, were there any alternatives that you have suggested prior to the bark mulch and material layment down? Or was there anything else? I know the gentleman said something about crushed stone or something of that nature.
The gentleman did suggest crushed stone. The planning board wasn't excited about that look, but also just having mulch that's just going to wash off into the road and leave exposed landscaping sheet, that's not great either. So I don't know what the right solution is. Sometimes these islands are hard.
Yeah, go ahead, Yolanda.
Question, so what's the size of the island? Because I can't, on the plan that I'm looking at, it's not very obvious. And when the developer was putting this in, was there any suggestion given to the developer to actually do plantings or something on the island?
I believe there are some trees.
There is some plantings on the island. There's trees and bushes.
But no low ground cover to make it look good?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
A question, and I think even, to me, even a little bit more concerning, sir, you mentioned about water pooling in front of your driveway.
Yeah.
Can you address that a little bit more? I mean, is it, you indicate that it's substantial. What,
Yeah, so
what does
whenever
that
it
mean?
rains in front of the driveway, if there's a puddle of water that collects in front of the driveway. They've known about this for a while because we brought it to the board the last time we came. So that was part of the complaint.
But he also said, the lawyer also said that they were gonna be addressing that.
Right.
They're gonna be putting 2,000 cash bond for the puddling issue. So
Yeah.
this is the issue that he's talking
Okay.
about, is what you're putting money aside for.
Correct.
Okay. Is the planning board, what is the planning board's position on this request here to accept the road?
It would be nice to have the road accepted and have everything done before the winter, but, the residents have made it very clear they would prefer to have the town plowing the road than the developer. At the same time, if we don't feel that it's really ready for street acceptance, it's not ready.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Like,
Ed-
yeah.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair,
ahead, sure.
has the town ever taken into consideration plowing a road with the understanding that the developer will complete the necessary work that needs to be done in the springtime? I know there's a $2,000 bond that they're setting aside, but I don't know if $2,000 is gonna be enough to do the work that needs to be done, especially if there's that type of pooling of water that, sir, that he's explaining to us. I don't know if it needs to be re-leveled or repaved to that point, and it's $2,000 is surely not gonna be amount to cover that. So is there anything that we could do as a town to at least provide the plowing for the residents there, for protection and for safety and security? And then, in the springtime have,
Well, why would we want to do that if we don't accept the road, though? I guess that's,
well, because we've done it for other non-accepted roads in the past.
oh, okay.
So I was just trying to think something out loud to make it a little
Sure.
bit more palatable for everybody.
Should we bring these guys back up to talk about what they're,
Sure.
go ahead, Preston.
I just want to say, I don't believe the planning board weighed in on the amount of the bond. I think
Oh.
that was something that has come
Okay.
up after our hearing. That was an issue we
So the
need.
bond for the puddling issue, you guys
Yes.
didn't address
I
that.
don't
That's
think
just-
I don't think we addressed the amount, because at the time of our hearing, the proper remedy was not determined. We didn't know for sure what the proper remedy would be.
Well, what would you recommend besides the puddling issue, we had this issue with the mulch or the coverage, or, like, what else?
Landscaping for the
The
island.
landscaping for that island. So is there something, other conditions we should put on, or requirements before we approve this? Do we need to put it on town meeting? Is that,
Well, and then I have a question
ahead.
related to the island that's there.
This
So,
report doesn't
does it
show any.
become town property if it's in the middle of the street, the island, or is it somehow related to the homes that are there?
I'm quite certain it's part of what is being accepted as part of the street.
That's my understanding as well.
We're not, I mean, I don't expect us to go out there and have our public works
Yeah.
department weed we have many islands that if we're lucky, they get mowed.
Yeah,
So,
right?
It's no different from the little grass strip between the sidewalk and the road that the town doesn't maintain,
Right,
even
so
though
if
it's
it's
town
in front of
property.
your house, you'll go and you'd mow that.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Right.
So could we ask them to improve the landscaping on the island, that it would be something that has some, low ground cover so that it's a little more durable without having to have a lot of maintenance?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an option for the developer to look at that. I mean, they might be able to do it now. Well, actually, now would be a good time.
Yeah, it seems, I agree, it seems like an easy fix at this point, to get that accomplished before winter. Just,
I think originally they
Well, hold on a second.
If
So,
Can you get the microphone?
is there, anyone else has comments on this from the public, where we hear from these guys? So, yes, if you could just respond to some of these concerns.
So Jeff Pizzeri, Site Supervisor for FRE Builders. So originally, the island was going to be a grass, and speaking with the DPW Director, in a point that was brought up earlier, that most of the islands are not maintained by the town because they just can't get to them. We had an issue come up where, discussing with the planning board, we decided to mulch it and do some plantings according to the landscape plan. The plantings were already on the landscaping plan, but
Okay.
we said we would mulch it instead of grassing it and then having beds to make it even more, more maintenance issue.
Right.
And then as we progressed, some weeds did show up, so we readdressed it, and we put the fabric down and remulched it. And it has held up pretty good, but there are some areas where we've got rounds around the trees, and that has the fabric, and the round areas that hold the water for the trees, obviously, since it's a bump, the rain has exposed some of the fabric in those areas. But the island looks good, and the fabric is holding back the weeds, and it's only been a couple weeks. But that was the solution that we had come up with that seemed to get everybody together on keeping it as low maintenance as possible, but yet keeping it attractive to the residents.
Could you add some ground cover kind of plants? That way you're not relying completely on the mulch? I mean,
I don't know, it's a fairly large island, and,
Mulch.
it's a question of sustainability too, would
Well,
they
then
live?
But who's
you
gonna
know?
sustain it with the mulch?
Ye-
Is the
yeah.
concern, right? You're putting the
Yeah.
mulch on it now. As we all know, for mulch to work, you need to replace it every couple of years. It needs to
Right.
be 3 inches deep. There's all kinds of stuff in relates to mulch.
Sure.
If it's not 3 inches deep,
Right.
even with the ground cover, with the fabric there, it's
Right.
not gonna do much after a year or two.
Yeah. I think the concern we had too when we first started doing it, because there was talk of it being grassed, was it just all dying and being
Right.
a dead area.
Yeah,
'Cause, so it comes down to, what's the best alternative, and what can you
Well,
do?
I think we just need to leave it natural, but something won't be too tough to maintain, I guess. No one's gonna maintain this on an ongoing basis.
Unless the residents choose to try to do something with it, right.
Right. Which they might.
All right.
Okay.
Preston, did you wanna say something else? No, you're just, all right, should we increase the bond? Should we hold this off until,
Well, I'm kind of curious, who came up with the $2,000 bond?
does someone want to address that? Do folks have anything else they wanna ask or say? I see, okay, hold on, all right.
Paul Beatty again. It's my understanding that was a discussion tossed out by Jeff Pizzeri to Sheila Page, the town planner. There were discussions in that regard. This infrareding is a very minor area. The flooding is not large at all. The puddling is not large at all. It's very, very small, and that's why $2,000 is,
So you think an asphalt guy can get in there and fix it for
Yes.
2,000?
Yeah.
yes.
In this
It's a
time of
small-
year?
It's a small snake-shaped puddle along the edge of the driveway,
Alright,
and I
so
was
you-
up there with Doug Small, the DPW director, so.
Okay.
Okay, my only concern, and I appreciate all the effort that you're putting towards this, but we know how water works. And water will find an easy access to find its lowest point. And the lowest point could be under this gentleman's driveway, which means it's gonna undermine the driveway, and he's gonna get cracking 4 to 5 years from now. How can he's gonna have to replace that, and it's not from his doing. It's a natural regress of the water that's finding its lowest point. And if it happens to be there, and it's under his driveway, I can see why he has a concern with the puddling now. You're not gonna see it now because it's fairly new, but in 3 to 5 years, that could happen.
I think part of
Suggestions, yeah.
part of I think you had this discussion with Sheila, but I think it was really more, I think Doug's recommendation to do the bond, and I think, in the amount, and I think specifically they were looking at doing some kind of infrared
Correct.
work, and the reason they couldn't do it now is because they couldn't find a company to do it, and I think the bond was to help do that. But you bring up a good point, which is how, you
How
know,
this affects this gentleman's driveway.
yeah,
in
and how
the
do
future.
you know,
Right.
is there,
So is there any way, with respect to this infrared test that they're going to do? And I don't know if you're gonna see anything now, but could that be part of the infrared testing, would be this gentleman's driveway in that area to see if there is any structural damage underneath there? I mean, believe me, I'm not an engineer, I'm far from it, but I am a homeowner, and that happened to my driveway, and I ended up having to do it all over again. So, yeah, I get concerned about that.
yeah.
The puddling in question is right at the apron at the road, so it's not so much on his driveway, it's at the apron, right at the road.
Well, I understand it, but the water has to go someplace.
Yeah,
And if it's going
it runs away from to the catch basins, away from that area, it's just a little,
Well, that,
it's a little
it's
area.
supposed to.
Yeah, it's supposed to, right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We're not sure of that yet.
Any other, I'm sorry.
Well, sorry, just one other thing.
Sure.
Could we, because we're not sure of what the cost is gonna be, I'm sure Doug has given you a good estimate, would you be willing to increase the cash bond so that for next spring, when you're doing this, we know the cost may go up, things like that you'd be willing to,
Certainly, what, 4 or 5, would that do it?
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That would be
Sounds good.
fine with me.
Any particular comments? Did you guys want to say anything else with this solution? I'm just trying to.
So regarding the circle,
This-
it's not just the plants, not where the plants is where you can see the landscape fabric. I have pictures on my phone. It's all over. And as you said you might require 3-inch depth, nothing close to that. So let's do it right. Let's do it well.
So you want to put a thicker layer of mulch, is that?
So the challenge with that is from the floor to the top of the, where the circle is, I don't think it's high enough to.
The curbing
curb
isn't high
is
enough
not
to
high
keep
enough.
the mulch inside the
Correct.
curbing.
It wouldn't. It would spill over. So I'm not sure what the laws say regarding the height of that. But if you added more mulch, if it rains, it will wash
It's just
over.
gonna go.
So is it a Cape Cod berm that you have around?
Slope granite.
Sloped granite,
Oh.
okay.
Oh.
So maybe you need to regrade it so it's not gonna run off. I don't, he's already got granite in place there, so
Sure.
I'm not sure we're gonna require more than that, right?
No.
So all we're asking for is for them to do the right thing. Because once this gets
Well, the right thing is what, to regrade it so it doesn't run off? Or are you saying it's too high and it's coming over the curbs? I'm not sure.
Right, currently, you can see the fabric. It's
Oh, the
doesn't
fabric.
look aesthetically pleasing.
Uh,
And
Suggestions from the board?
even the plants are sparse. I'm not sure if that's according to plan.
Well, it'll grow up, I'm sure
I would expect,
stuff will
depending on
grow
what
up.
the plants are, they'll spread eventually, not knowing what they are, I can't tell you. But I would think eventually, if you have some kind of ground cover, it does spread and covers more of the ground.
Sure.
So,
So-
The other thing, I think they've already made a commitment to make sure that it's done and done correctly. You made a suggestion that maybe 3 inches, and that's what the typical
Right.
mulch requirement is usually 3 inches.
so maybe as part of when they come back in the spring to finish this, they do another redo
A
of
three-
the island
of 3
with the
inches.
3 inches of
Right.
mulch.
And, that's graded
And then go
properly,
from
so
there.
it's not gonna run off like
Right.
he's saying.
And the other thing with respect to neighborhoods, I know that a lot of neighborhoods in the town, even my neighborhood as well, we have a specific little island at the end of the roadway that has a street sign on it. And we all take turns decorating it, maintaining it, putting planters there to make it look nice.
Sure.
So that may be something that you make this a neighborhood event type of thing to get, a neighborhood party and do something of that nature. That's what keeps the neighborhood together too.
I don't think we're opposed to that.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
we'd happily do that.
Okay.
But I think it's important that we get it at the right state.
Oh, I
Sure.
to
I
start with.
agree.
All right,
No,
So
I
thank
agree.
you.
if we
Thank
on
you.
that
Thanks.
same level, I think we'll be okay.
All right, so,
Okay.
any other, so I've never done one of these where we actually put on conditions, so do we need to
Well, I
write
think
something up?
They've agreed,
Contingent.
they've already said they're gonna do the bond, they're willing to do it up to $5,000, and they're willing to remulch the island in the spring.
So do we
But
need
we
a
can condition the motion to include.
Yeah.
To include that.
So why don't we,
Yeah.
can someone do that?
Yep. Okay, I move that we,
One second.
okay.
Sir.
Is it important that we add specifics of what they do? Because they could just come in the spring and just dump mulch on top.
Well, we're
and it
going to,
flows up.
we're going to do the motion
It's
now.
gonna be part of the motion.
So thank you.
Thank
Yeah, go ahead, Yolanda, let's see if we,
Okay. I move that we approve the street layout for Royal Colony Road, provided that they complete the remaining items required by the DPW director and the town planner and add this to the special town meeting warrant. Those items are that they are going to have a $5,000 cash bond to review and fix the puddling issues, and that they're going to add up to 3 inches of mulch to the island landscaping in the spring.
and before, so we just want to discuss that, because we actually have to close the hearing before we vote on this.
Mhm.
So any discussion on Yolanda's motion?
No.
All right, so I'm going to
Motion to close the
motion
hearing.
to close the hearing on the layout for Royal Colony Road.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Opposed, none. Hearing is closed. Okay, so Yolanda has made a motion. Do I have a second for
A
the
second
motion?
here?
All right, so all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much, appreciate it.
And thanks for your participation. All right.
Yes.
So just
Well, thank
just
you
a
all.
note, I passed over public citizens' participation, but we may get back to that after these hearings. But is there anybody here for citizens' participation? I do intend to, but I'm not doing it right now, Mark. I just wanted to get an idea. So it's you. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so we're going on to our next street layout hearing. So I'm opening a street layout hearing for Tideman Road. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a layout hearing for Tideman Road, plan dated September 27th, 2018. This plan is subject to modifications per the Planning Board. Public hearing will be held on the matter at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass., Wednesday, November 7th, 2018 at 7:10 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. At sroby.com, sign chair out. All right.
Hi, my name is Steve Hickey. I'm with Richmond Development. We are the people that built the road and
Okay.
sold the houses.
Great.
We've been through this with the planning board, had a couple hearings. The planning board has approved it to go to you. Punch list has been completed. That's it.
Great,
Not
okay.
much more to say.
All right, thanks, Steve. Is there anyone speaking against? Anybody else wants to speak on this?
DPW has approved all the work. they
Preston,
need.
anything we need to know?
Any additional information? All right, comments or deliberation by the board?
Seeing that
Alright.
everything is done and there's no, no complaints.
All right.
Looked at this one before.
Can I get a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Motion, hearing's closed. All right, I have a suggested motion.
I move that we approve the street as laid out for Tideman Road, provided that they don't have to do anything. The layout for Tideman Road, and then it gets added to the special town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor of motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. That's a motion carries. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a hearing, thank you all, thanks, Steve. So we had a hearing at 7:15, which has been withdrawn, so I'm going to go a little late, but not too bad, only 15 minutes late, not an hour and 15 minutes late.
So this is the one that we had last meeting, and we forwarded to this one, and they've withdrawn it now.
Correct. He didn't have all the information, so he may reapply in the future.
Thank you.
All right.
What is this? I'm sorry.
The auto place that was going for a Class 2 license, and he wasn't
Alrighty.
here at our last meeting.
Yes,
All right.
okay.
So I'm going to, this is a
Yes, I'll move.
I'm gonna open this continued public hearing on the dog hearing, the dog named Coco. Is there, I think, well, Mike, why don't you give us a report? At the last, we had some legal questions and some jurisdiction questions And we've heard from town council, so why don't you just update everyone on that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there were really 3 outstanding questions that the board had asked for some clarification on. First was whether or not the Board of Selectmen must act on this hearing, or act as the hearing authority on this hearing. I think there was a question as to whether or not the board should recuse itself, and if it could recuse itself. Town council reviewed both the bylaw and also the statute that relates to this, this hearing. Although this statute discusses the hearing authority, and it generalizes it to mean the selectman of a town, the mayor of a city, the officer in charge of the animal commission, the chief or commissioner of a police department, et cetera, the town has adopted a bylaw, which is found in Chapter 87, which provides that the board is the one that would is required to hear this and act on it. The board meaning the Board of Selectmen. There was also a question if there is any conflict of interest here, or any conflict of interest. Town council has found that just because a person involved in this hearing is a town employee, it doesn't constitute a matter in which the member of the board has a financial interest. As long as it's been disclosed, the board can certainly act, and there is no conflict of interest. So, any questions with regards to that point? And I'll get to the other 2. The other 2 was whether or not a chicken is a domestic pet or farm animal. And let's see, town council has provided that this is not considered livestock or fowl, and that it is considered a pet, or a domestic chicken, I should say. And town council has provided some case law in support of that, and also looked at the Department of Fish and Game regulations. And then finally, the board has asked, with help in differentiating between a dangerous dog and a nuisance dog. So the general laws, which the bylaw mirrors, defines a dangerous dog as a dog that either without justification attacks a person or domestic animal causing physical injury or death. 2, behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified, imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or to a domestic or owned animal. And then it also talks about a nuisance dog as one that has excessive barking or other disturbance, causing interference, and has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal, or a person. So the clear distinction between a dangerous dog and a nuisance dog is a dangerous dog must attack a person or domestic animal and cause physical injury or death, but a nuisance dog merely threatens livestock, a domestic animal, or a person. So I think with those definitions or those clarifications in hand, given the facts that you have received, I think that should help you make your determination. My recommendation for you tonight is to open it up and see if there's any new information that has come forward since your last hearing, and then at that point in time, close the hearing and do any deliberation and make your decision.
Is there, before I do that, is there any questions to board members on the recommendation? Yeah. Steve.
No, actually, no questions on you're talking about the town
The
council
legal,
recommendation?
yeah.
No
Any
question on that, but I do want to acknowledge that I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I do want to acknowledge that I've reviewed the tapes several times. I've reviewed Mass General Law, so I think I'm more than prepared to adjudicate this situation.
And so my reading of what the town council is advised is that this is a dangerous dog. Do people agree with that or disagree? Pardon me?
Correct, straight definition, because it
Okay.
killed animals.
Right, okay. Is there, do we have any updates from anybody who can add some, since the last hearing, care to get us any new information? Yes, ma'am. Do you want to come up to the, this microphone? I don't know if you have a progress report or any other information?
I don't have any new information like new killing events or anything like that, but
Well,
I also looked up the definition of a chicken, and its name is Gallus domesticus. So clearly, it is a domesticated animal.
okay.
So, and then you said it's not a livestock or fowl.
Well, I think we've agreed with the definition that I think you had proposed at the last meeting, so,
Okay,
I'm not, okay?
thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, updates? The owners here? Kara, do you want to just, especially if you have new information, like what's happened since our meeting, you know, that kind of thing. We did all receive a letter from the training people about what you're doing with Coco in
Sure.
terms of training.
Kara Terrell, 3 Hilldale Place. So in the time that we've had the extension of the hearing, we had adhered to all the, not only the things that we agreed, but all the things that we did, continued to have 3 days a week training, especially with recall, and never have her unsupervised in our enclosed yard, as well as had an actual desensitization training with that type of stimuli. And the result was very favorable according to the several head trainers and the owner of the training company. The other piece is that we have, there's obviously been no further incidents. And I think as far as speaking about the pet, I would think that we're talking about someone who would seek out a permit like you would with any other pet, and that was not done with that, as well as not adhering to the Board of Health code of not having the coop too close. And that's something we didn't
Right.
talk about last
So,
time.
okay, and I think you brought it up, but.
We're
I'm
not the
sure.
completion, and it is relevant, Rob,
How is it relevant?
because it's talking about whether it's a pet or livestock.
Oh,
and
I see what you're.
someone would
okay.
know if their pet was gone in a day and a half, too.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you talk about the fence at all, or what you've done with the fence, or?
The fence has, we've had a special lock put in place on the front of the fence, and we have the other latch on the inside of the fence, as well as the other 2 egresses are latched with a double chain length fence, locks on both of those as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, just, if you just clarify or just verify the actions that you've taken at this point. So what I have on, from what I've taken from the last hearing and from any additional information, so right now you're engaged in prey drive training.
Yeah, we have 3 times a
Specifically,
week
prey drive
training,
training.
as well as additional training. We did it
Okay.
on a weekend, hour-long
So
training
you've
as
got
well.
reinforcements of your fencing.
Yep, we have constant, she's always in a crate or in a supervised setting.
Okay. Electronic collar, that's
We have an
still-
e-collar that we purchased that was over $400 that
so
we have,
that's
the
being-
BOS.
That's actively used. And just to clarify, the dog is not left unattended.
Correct.
Okay.
And we did all the locks, inside and outside. We also have a special tether that we are now using. That's if we want to have her outside in the yard, even when we're supervising with the e-collar on, there's a special, it's basically like a tether that you can put into the ground. That's pretty high tech. And the trainers were really excited that we bought that. They thought that was a good addition as well.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right, so, thank you.
And I just
sure.
additionally, sorry, Steve, the letter we got from the American Lab Rescue is also about Coco being around over 28 small puppies, smaller animals. We have had 3 cats during this time as well, so.
That was one last question I have for you. Other than the chickens, has there been any other aggressive behavior noticed by Coco?
No. And I had the 3 witnesses last time talking
Yeah.
about allowing their children to not only sleep over my house, but left the dog in the alone with the kids.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
So, I think we're ready to deliberate and discuss.
Maybe on that. My suggestion would be, you know, if you have all the information that you need, you determine whether it's a dangerous dog or not. At that point in time, once you've come to that conclusion,
you can then look at what your remedies are, and
Yeah.
then juxtapose that with what has already been done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's, okay, so why don't we proceed to that? Okay. All right, so does it,
That was a commercial break, just wanted to,
so,
Yes, break.
Rob, you probably want to close the hearing?
well, I thought, but shouldn't we talk about, shouldn't we
No, we need to
deliberate? and
You
close
close
the
the hearing and then
and
then we
deliberate.
deliberate after.
So we need a motion to close the hearing.
No, it says, my list, it says deliberation and then close the hearing. Have I been? So, all right, yes, ma'am, if you, yeah, go ahead, just a brief statement, please.
Me too. Sorry.
So, I think the definition of a dangerous dog speaks for itself here. It's not a nuisance, based on the straight definition. I think you kind of said that already, but,
Yes.
and then secondly, I would like to emphasize the opinion of the ASPCA, which I share. It says, enforcement of dangerous dog laws is ultimately the responsibility of local government authorities, and it is important that they, meaning you, exercise your responsibility with vigor and discretion to protect both the public and responsible pet guardians. So according to Chapter 140, Section 157, which is the dangerous dog.
We actually
Right.
have
We
that
have
in
that.
I
our
know,
possession, and
yes.
we've read that, so I think
Yes.
we're ready to move on, Susan,
Yes.
and I think we have enough
So-
information.
Why don't we
Yes.
just let her, okay.
I
Why don't
just
you
would
finish
like
your statement?
To follow, the remedies provided by law.
There's 7
Okay.
remedies we're
We're
familiar with.
looking at them, thank you. Okay, so let's go into comments and deliberation. You all right, Joe?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just-
So
Fine.
I think we do have the list, and is anyone prepared to make a list, to tell us a list of measures that we want to have taken? You've kind of started on a list. We've
Sure.
heard from,
I think we need
So-
to determine if
Yeah.
it's a dangerous or a nuisance dog.
I think
All right, I
we
thought
need
we
to
kinda
agree
had
on
that.
what
Okay.
the status of the chickens are, the status of the dog, and then
yeah, I thought we'd kind of
the
done that, but, yeah.
remedial
All right.
actions, so,
So all right, so I'll just say, based on council's interpretation, it sounds like it's a dangerous dog. And do people agree or disagree with that, or?
so I'll give you my thought process here based on our legal rulings, and I'm sure I'm not gonna make everybody happy or both parties happy, but, it's clear that the chickens are a domestic pet. No question about that. They're treated as pets. They're not raised for sale or for eating. So I'm assuming we all agree that they're
Pets, yeah.
assuming that they're a pet. By definition, it's clear that the act of the dog defines it as a dangerous dog. So if we agree to those 2 statuses, then, what is an appropriate remedial action here? Now, 157 goes to, if the hearing authority deems a dog a dangerous dog, the hearing authority shall order one or more of the following. So we have a lot of options here in which to apply. My opinion, number 1, qualifies in my estimation here, and it reads that the dog be humanely restrained. So what does that mean, humanely restrained? Does the fencing, the trainings, the collars,
Yep.
having the dog, not having the dog unattended at any time, does that qualify? So that's the question that I would ask the board to
And I
to
would-
discuss.
Okay.
I agree.
Are we gonna do these individually? Because I would say yes to that.
I think what, at the end, we want a motion on, I guess we have to formally vote on the status of the dog, is that, and then I think we
have
should,
to formally determine if it's a dangerous dog.
that's what I think the answer is yes.
Think
Yeah,
yes.
to
Yes.
keep it clean, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my suggestion is that we kind of discuss and come up with a list, however we want to phrase it, that we all kind of agree on.
And I think it goes, Joe has talked about this in the past numerous times about progressive disciplines and so on. you know, and how do we address that as part of the motion, in the case that the animal should get loose again or do another event, so,
Okay.
so I think, you know, those are the things that, you know, that are in my thought process.
So we should then have a motion to deem what kind of dog it is, and then
Yes.
close the hearing?
I think
then
so,
make
if
the
we're,
motion.
if we're then ready to make a
Okay.
motion, yes.
I move that we deem, based on the.
Oh, I'm sorry, we should take that vote after I close it, I think,
Okay.
don't you? Yeah. But is there any further discussion on the status of the dog? Any further discussion on the measures to be taken? We think we have a motion ready for that? Are you ready? you
I'm
think?
ready. Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so then I think we can close a motion to close the public hearing.
So
Second.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Hearing's closed. Okay, so I think, Yolanda, your motion?
Yes, I move that based on the definition of a dangerous dog because of the death of the chickens, that we deem Coco a dangerous dog.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The motion carries 4-0. Okay, Steve, are you ready with your list?
So, well, I guess, do we need to discuss this? I mean,
I
that was,
think
again, those were my
So-
considerations.
So my question to you, Steve, do you have other things that they're recommending, the 1 through 7, that you're gonna propose? Or is that what you said is your
No, I'm-
proposal for
at
what we
this-
should do with Coco?
At this point, and based on the premise of, you know, progressive
Discipline.
discipline, you know, I think this is a good starting point, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Which is where we did it at the last hearing. We said we're gonna give it 30 days, see
Right.
how things went.
So that would be, my recommendation is to, you know, apply the
The
first
first one.
order
Humane restraint.
based on these actions, and if there are future events, then we will address it
Address
differently,
them at future
right?
events,
And
right.
do we want to detail the measures like that Karis listed, or do you think?
Well, I think
just
those should be in
general?
the motion,
Those-
like
those
we've
Okay,
done in the
so
past.
are you ready to do that? That's what I guess I'm asking.
Well, again, I mean, is everybody,
I'm comfortable with
comfortable
what you
with-
said.
Right.
okay,
So, yeah.
so,
That falls under the progressive discipline style of doing things, and
And
I'm
as
all
was
for that.
stated, it is our discretion as to what should happen with a dangerous dog, even though, you know, because, as I asked, it's the chickens, it's been one incident. I mean, we were told that it had tried to get the chickens before and it didn't, but it's only been the chickens that this dog has attacked. So I
That we
think.
are aware of, that we reported to.
No, and I
Unfortunately,
mentioned that.
right, but unfortunately, what's in front of us is that one incident that was reported to us. We can't act on something that wasn't
Well,
reported
no,
to us.
I addressed
Right.
the fact
No,
that
I know
it had
that.
tried to get them the last time, one time, and it didn't, and this time, unfortunately, it did.
Right.
so,
I meant the other neighbors, sorry.
so to, I guess, clarify the motion, and it's based on the hearing authority shall order one or more of the following. So the motion would be that the owner of Coco shall humanely restrain the animal, provided, I'm going to read this section, provided that no order shall provide that a dog deemed dangerous be chained, tethered, or otherwise tied to an inanimate object, including but not limited to a tree, a post, or a building, and that this motion will be conditioned by the following requirements and actions: continued and additional prey drive training, additional fence reinforcements, the use of an e-collar, and the requirement that the dog is not left unattended.
Okay.
Is that
Second.
covered?
That covers it
Yes.
for me.
All right.
That covers it for me.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Okay, thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you.
All right, thank you all for that. Okay. Oh, so, yep, we're done with that. All right, so we'll go on. This next agenda item is 128 Main Street and the potential land taking. Are there people here that want to speak on this measure, on this item?
The previous item or the new item?
The new one.
The new item, yes. Any,
Progressive training is not in the law.
okay, Susan, we're done with that, I think, all right, thank you.
There's, just to clarify, if, there are remedies, Susan, if you're not happy with our ruling,
Okay.
there's steps that you can take, just to clarify that.
What would that be?
Well, the law speaks to district court.
Okay. Great, they will be reviewed.
So I'm just saying, it's built into the law.
No, that's great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, just show of hands, people intend to speak on this or concerned, so I'm just trying to see how much time we have available. Okay, so, all right, so this was, as you may have heard, the Board of Selectmen over the past whatever time has been concerned about the project at 128 Main Street in various ways, and there's been various discussions about it, both with the planning board and amongst us as a board. So it was felt that we'd put it on the agenda. It was for an open discussion. And so with that, I'm just going to, I think, just kind of characterize some of the concerns of the magnitude of the building, the height, the closest to the street, the number of housing units, et cetera. And all these have been talked about a lot, so I don't have too much else to say about it. But is there people here who want to come up and talk to us about it? Go ahead. Well, why don't you go ahead, Cliff? We'll
Preston.
Rob, would you like me to
sure. Hold on, Cliff.
clarify just like where things are with the process with the project, or?
Sure, if you want.
No,
Yeah.
just,
I would let Preston start.
Okay.
So.
Sure, that makes sense.
I think the initial application was submitted back in September of 2017. I can't say for sure, but the applicant has been before the planning board many times over a year. The planning board has worked with them. The planning board, I think, issued a decision, an approval, I think, last month. And so I think it's still, that approval has been issued. It's still before the Conservation Commission, I believe, for a stormwater permit.
Okay. I think I should note that Carl Hackett, one of our members, was not able to be here tonight. And so I'm just, Preston's the chair of the planning board. I see he's out there, so you've been very involved in this project, so if you have anything you wanted to say.
Yes, the planning board spent a year on this project. It started with 17 units. We pared it down to 13. We've looked at many things we can do to improve this project. It is consistent with our zoning. It is a by right project, and the only major waiver that they obtained was for a reduction in the parking requirements. I feel that through the planning board process, we've gotten something that is certainly much better than they originally submitted, and something that is a net positive for downtown. I'm kind of concerned about the Board of Selectmen doing backseat planning board work. My toes are feeling a little bruised, to be blunt.
Preston, just a question about the parking waiver. Can you explain that a little bit?
Excuse me.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but based on the number of units and the square footage of commercial space, they're normally required to have a certain amount of parking unless the planning board but the zoning also allows the planning board to allow a smaller amount, so they don't have to get a variance for that.
Right.
And the planning board, in working with them and with the number of units being reduced, agreed to grant that waiver.
Okay, so, because I know that's been one of the concern of people, so you reduce the amount of parking that they need to provide.
Essentially, there's enough parking for the residents, and for the commercial, they would probably be parking mostly in the municipal lots.
So why do they need a waiver? You said it's in line with the number of units, so why do they need a waiver?
The calculations based on the zoning come out with a higher number than what is there. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't tell you what.
Joe might.
Can I just speak to the numbers? I remember?
Sure,
It
sure.
was 21 spots, and we gave them a waiver.
Could you identify
Yeah,
yourself?
Joe Rubertone, 27 Lakeview Terrace, member of the planning board.
Okay.
It was a 21 spot requirement, and I believe
Joe, you may need to get closer so they can.
it was a 21 spot requirement. We gave them a waiver for 4 spots, 17 spots.
And,
Sounds
okay.
right.
All right, thank you. So before we get into, anything else, Preston?
No, I
You'll
think
be
that's
here
all I
for
have to say.
questions. All right, thank you. So, any members of the board want to say anything before we get into hearing from folks, or? No? Okay,
Let's hear from them first.
yeah. So let's hear from people. So, Cliff, you want to come up and talk? And
Invite them to line up and stand.
yeah, you may want to, people, that's a
Yeah.
good idea. If people want to speak, if you're okay to stand and wait, that gives us an idea who else wants to speak.
Excuse me.
If you
Cliff-
can't stand for extended periods, let me know and we'll accommodate that. Sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
Cliff Wilson, 378 Elliott Street. My first question is, what is it that we're actually discussing about tonight? Is there a question of doing one thing or another? There was talk about
Well,
eminent domain.
it was felt that we should put that out in case we had extensive discussion about it. So
Okay.
that's kind of just to make sure we comply with the open meeting law and no one's taken by surprise. So if people want to discuss it, that's fine. If they don't, then they don't, so.
All right, I mean, I've been following this through, and I have no issues with the planning board. I will say in that regard of them originally coming in with 17, and it got cut back to 13. That's typical with any plan, is that you always go in and you ask for the most, and then when you give a little, everybody looks good. I don't agree with that, but that's the way it works. But there's a bit of a conundrum here, and the problem that I have, and I just want to bring it before you, is earlier this evening when I was having supper, the person sitting at the table next to me was, as far as I know, the owner of the building. Now, the owner of the building isn't the one who's been submitting these plans, to the best of my knowledge. The owner of the building said to me, "Gee, I hope they pass that and take it by eminent domain." So I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Well, then I'd get rid of the problem with the 50-year lease that's on that building." It just seems to me that there's a bunch of stuff. Evidently, there's a builder or let me rephrase that. There's a landscape architect who is going to be a builder, I guess, who is the one who's been submitting these plans, but he doesn't own the building. So maybe there's an agreement that he will buy it if he can do it, but then there's this 50-year lease that's in place. So I'm very confused as to what really is going to be. It's not so much the building itself, although I think the building looks stupid. It looks like something that belongs in Marshfield because of the tides or something, but that's neither here nor there. I think it's also foolish in that you have north-facing open garages in the winter in Massachusetts, but that's the problem that somebody will have to face that lives there. But my problem is who are we doing the favor for? Somebody who really has no vested interest other than the fact that they've spent money on plans. I mean, I buy a lottery ticket and I hope to win, but if I don't, is it your fault that I didn't win? So I don't want to hear about builders who spend money on plans and then things don't work out to their agreement. That's a risk you take when you're a builder.
Sure.
But I am curious as to about who's really being served. If the owner wants to get rid of the property, and the person who's going to build doesn't own the property, and then they're going to have a problem with a lease, what is really going on? That's my question.
All right. Is there someone prepared to address that? This is the legal status of the proponent. I think Cliff is questioning their ability, their legal right to propose this and do this work.
Well, I mean, I will say typically what happens is you have a landowner and you have a developer. And usually the developer is the one that applies for the permits, And usually that purchase and sale and them acquiring the land is contingent on them getting that permits. So the developer sometimes doesn't, oftentimes, at least in my experience, doesn't own the property until the permits are issued and there's a closing date.
And
As far as the legal stuff, I don't know. I've heard a lot of stuff, kind of spread around about this agreement and, whether there is one in place, whether there isn't one in place.
So I think, all right, would
I
it
don't
be
know about
useful to
that.
have Steve address this? He seems to think he knows something about this. So you just want to talk to this legal question?
Yes, Steve Greenberg, 350 America Boulevard and other locations here in town. I've been involved with this property prior to this particular developer having it under contract. And there is an agreement.
Steve, what's your involvement with this property?
I represent the owner. I represent the Alberinis.
The owner,
as a
that
real
Cliff,
estate-
the person Cliff is referring to.
I wasn't at,
Okay,
I'm guessing
sure.
Burnham's.
Okay.
I'm guessing Burnham's.
Okay, all right. So
And
you represent the
I
owner.
represent the Alberinis to sell the property. And we put the property under agreement with Carlos Hanzi, who has been in front of the planning board and conservation and others. In that process, there's an agreement, a purchase and sale, and as Mr. Herbert mentioned, a developer can't get in front of a planning board unless he has site control. And
That's what the PNS
that's what the
does.
purchase and sale is for. And there's been a purchase and sale agreement in place for quite a while, because it's taken quite a while. And in addition to that purchase and sale, the Alberinis did enter into a long-term lease many, many years ago, and that lease has a period that goes beyond this date and ends, I don't know exactly when, maybe 12 or 15 years. But the person that has that lease also has an agreement with the Alberinis, once permits and approvals are obtained, that they will hand over that space vacant.
And I will presume that the planning board would have reviewed this kind of documentation as part of their process.
Well, again, I think, and I don't want to speak for the planning board,
Right.
but, and I've been in front of planning boards not only in this town and many others, a planning board would not hear
Okay.
a proponent unless they had site control.
Any other questions on this before?
I do, and I appreciate you coming forward and providing that information. And so I followed up again this afternoon with respect to what I had heard earlier. And there was an agreement, but nothing was ever signed, because when there was a decision that was made, the leasee holder asked if she could get 6 to 8 months to help find a location for the current, I'm just, you
Joe,
know,
I didn't bring the document with me. I have it on my phone if you'd like to see it, but that's not,
if it's a
that's not the
signed
case.
document, that's fine, but right now, I'm just telling you what was expressed to me through a very close channel to that individual that you said signed this document. She's under the estimate, she's 99% sure she didn't sign anything, only a verbal agreement without the 6 to 8 months. And actually, the response you got back was from the potential owner and the attorney representing him was no, they weren't willing to do that.
So if we think, I guess I
But if
just,
Steve has that documentation,
I have the
that would make it a
documentation.
little bit
So-
easier for
and
people to make that
right.
decision.
And I'd prefer it to come from Attorney Jack than from
sure,
myself.
all right.
Sure.
So I'm gonna, I don't know, Yolanda, I'm gonna suggest that
just
if it's a
have one-
legal issue that,
Well,
yeah.
my question is, as we make this discussion, if there's an issue between the landowner and the leasee,
Mhm.
I don't know that that is, one, relevant for us to discuss.
Yep.
I think it's more, we're looking at the process that our planning board has gone through for a year and whether or not we as a board are gonna do something
Sure.
about that.
And so,
So
yeah.
the lease and the legal issues from that perspective are not relevant to either our discussion or our decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I largely agree. The only thing I would add, though, that given this kind of information, we should make sure that the planning board or the building inspector or whoever's in charge of this has made sure that these are the proper
Except
documents.
that is a legal issue that is between the landowner and the leasee.
Right, except that,
And if there's documents that, I mean, if the planning board has done their process.
that's what I mean,
Then,
right.
but
All I'm saying
again,
is
I
they've
don't know
got-
that that's relevant in regard, if I'm coming forward with a development project and I have an agreement with the landowner If he has another agreement with someone else, that's not relevant to me bringing my
Yeah,
plans
the only
forward
thing
to
I
the
would
planning board for
suggest we
approval.
say, right, I get it. So the only thing I would suggest is that the plan should make sure the proper documents are on file and that they are signed. I guess that's the only thing we can do here on this one. Yes,
I'm Brandy Kinsman, 6 Lucy French Way. I'm in support of the development at 128 Main. I just wanted to say I've been following the process through the planning board for the last year. I think that things are moving along in the right direction. My concern was basically the town stepping in at this point and taking control of the land by eminent domain. If there is such a issue with the property, it sounds like it's a legal issue that you guys have no control over. But my concern was the town taking the property by eminent domain after a year plus through the process. So.
all right, thank you.
Roberta Silliman, 28 Woodridge Lane. I've spoken before at the planning board when they've discussed 128 Main, and I want to start off by acknowledging all the work that the planning board has done according to the law and following the bylaws and the hearings. And they've done a lot of work, and they have tried to get some improvements for the town on this building. So I want to acknowledge that, and I don't want Preston's toes to feel bruised. Okay.
Well, that's good.
All right, but here's the dilemma that I see. At each of the hearings at the planning board and at some of the meetings here, there were a lot of residents, a lot of people who came and were very concerned for various reasons about this building. And they were concerned for very legitimate reasons beyond just different feelings about aesthetic style. For me personally, I feel like it's a boat on stilts, and I think it's a very ugly building. But beyond all of that, because that's my personal opinion, and somebody else might think it's gorgeous, I'm really upset that it is smack dab in the middle of the historic town hall, the historic church, the historic cemetery, that newly renovated building, duplex that was renovated according to historic standards, and even the Ashland House across the street, which is similar style to the Johnstone Inn and other places, and the factory buildings. I mean, it's going to stick out like such an eyesore over there that it just doesn't belong in that historic area. And if we're serious about making a downtown historic district, what are we doing having that building there? So that's one thing. Safety is an issue, I think. That corner is almost it's a very busy corner. Add all these 2,000 square foot commercial space with multiple ins and outs kinds of trips for people trying to merge over there and get through that traffic light. I think we're just asking for trouble from a public safety perspective. And the other thing is the traffic. I think that the traffic and the safety. And once this is up, there's no going back. And that's what I think is the conundrum that we have, and the upset here is that the planning board did do their job. It was approved according to law and zoning. So where's the relief? Where's a method of relief for people in town when there's passionate dissension and people really don't want that building? It hasn't been compromised enough in terms of size and appropriateness for the spot. It's not respectful of what's around it. How are people supposed to get any relief for that? How is the town supposed to get any relief? And we're looking at $30 million of hopefully commercial investment in the downtown. If I was a business person, I would look at the downtown and go, it's mishmash. They don't have a plan. Anything goes here. Maybe I'll go someplace else and make my investment. I'm worried about the future for us. I'm worried about that being an eyesore, and I don't think anybody here wants to have that be part of, you know, what people remember about Ashland. And I don't know what the answer is. You know, eminent domain could be a slippery slope, I get that. But I don't see that there is any other solution, and I think we need a solution. So we're looking to you as leaders in town for a solution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. We do not have a plan for downtown per se, like a comprehensive plan, right? We have the that's really a streetscape plan, but we don't have a plan that lays out architectural styles, other than the zoning. We have the form-based code, which this is with, if I'm
Right, but
correct.
it's in compliance with respect to a PCA that took there, and, you know, they combined it. They didn't
Right.
take one set design and just stuck with
Yeah.
that design.
So there's a
Bits and
problem.
pieces.
I think we understand that. I think we agree that there's a problem with the approved this building under the code.
Yeah,
Correct.
I will say, I mean, I think, you know, I believe there was an economic development plan. I believe it was part of the comprehensive plan that was done in 2003. All talk about density and the downtown, and they all talk about creating a livable, commercial activity. I don't think they necessarily got into
The details.
you know, like whether a mansard roof is going to be appropriate here or there.
And if a project is seen as oversized or out of keeping with the character, it's not necessarily addressed in these plans. I think. Yes. Sir.
Hi, Ryan. Ryan Turncliffe, 21 Rossi Lane. Thanks for your consideration on the issue, and thanks to the planning board for the hard work over the last year. I want to echo just one of Rebecca's points and one that you just made around the plan. You know, I think the project probably should go forward. I'm not necessarily in favor or against it, but I did want to speak to your point about empowerment, and I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to feel empowered to make decisions and to hear the public. I know there was a comment that only a few of us ever show up and comment on these things, but that's the reality, and I think you have to listen to the voices that you hear. The Board of Selectmen should be empowered. You're elected officials. I don't think you should necessarily override the planning board, but I think maybe when there are projects that have this level of involvement, consternation, dispute, that earlier involvement in the process might be helpful. So thanks for your efforts
Sure.
there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you, Ryan.
I just want to address that because that's a point that we have talked about, a point that I've tried to encourage in the past, and I think we're getting closer to some sort of communication feedback network between
All
the Board of
committees.
Selectmen, the Planning Board certainly, the ZBA, the Conservation Commission, early on into these projects, so that we're having this conversation early, and we're information sharing, and, you know, hopefully we can avoid, you know, these kinds of 11th hour angst-ridden discussions, because, you know, this is, you know, to me, I echo what Roberta said as well. I mean, this is, you know, why are we talking about this here and now? You know, it's been a year in the planning board, and where it rightfully resides. You know, the only reason to have it at this point with this board is extreme action, in my opinion. That's really, and I think also you know, I remember the commentary about 21 Main Street. Nobody liked 21 Main Street when it was being built, for a variety of reasons. It could have been, you know, they didn't like the look of it. They didn't like the placement. They didn't like where it was relative to the other buildings. And here it is. It's built. It's occupied.
I think the common, if I could, the common theme is vision, is what's envisioned and who's responsible for that. As members of boards change over years, having a vision that's laid out and agreed to at least by you know, a number of different committees all at once. That's maybe a 5-year or 10-year vision may help some of this. And I think there are different pieces of that puzzle that are out there. They're just not all put together yet. So, but thank you. I do think it's important that you allow the
Thank you, Ryan.
opportunity to hold this hearing. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Yes, Michael, you
Yeah,
want to say something?
I appreciate everybody's comments, Ryan especially. I do just want to remind the board that, I mean, you have had opportunities to act on this. You had a development agreement before you, it was before May, so it was back in April, that talked about reducing it to 12 units, had a few of them affordable. There was talk about a waiver
Yeah,
of
we
fees.
tried. Yep.
There was a number of reasons why that didn't go through. But I agree, even at that point in time, it was a little bit late. I think everybody felt it was a little bit late. But,
Yeah, we did,
yeah.
you
They
did,
haven't dug a shovel yet.
what's that?
They haven't put a shovel in the ground yet. You know, a lot of money was spent, but when you had those discussions with them, it was shortly thereafter. I mean, the planning board made the decision how long ago?
What decision?
To pass, the plan.
It's last month?
Just last month, right?
Yeah.
But we've had these discussions months prior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're behind these discussions. They just didn't want to listen to what we had to say, and I'll say it.
That's right.
End of story.
Yeah.
We gave our 2 cents worth in, and that's, okay, fine. And I appreciate the comment, but I didn't drive over your toes. You walked in front of my car.
Oh, there's it. All right, thanks,
Can I
Joe.
trademark that?
You can,
But that-
whatever you like
yeah.
to do.
Okay. Yes, Mark.
Okay. Good evening. Mark
Good evening.
Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road. And I am for this. And I have the curiosity, first of all, is being in front here for extreme discussions of detail that have been brought up. My first question through the chairman to anybody can answer, what's the extreme part of it that's gotta be talked on?
I'm not sure, you're referring, when you say extreme, what are you referring to?
Your comment, Steve's comment, it's in front of the board for extremes.
Oh, I think he was referring to the possibility of eminent domain. Is that
Yeah,
pretty much
that's,
everyone's?
that's correct.
Okay. And to, again, through the chairman, to the chairman of the planning board, Preston, yes, they've gone through this a couple of times. I've been talking about, I've been with the developer to say yes or no for this, and I'm saying still yes, even though it's been a long time since I last spoke. It is not just because of historical building, but it can be, for lack of a better term, gutted out for future business opportunities. And that's what I'm looking at it for, is that these are future businesses come downtown. There's a place for that.
Okay.
Okay? And it also looks like the downtown still, again, Mr. Chairman, to the town manager,
Okay.
is looking for some sort of twins of buildings that will have a look like a pronounced frame look to the town. Buildings that can be look face value from the road and look ecstatic going all the way down, and have business be together. It's kind of hard to me explain because I'm trying to talk as a designer and as a future person. I'm also saying, as a person, me, is don't put down the form-based codes,
Okay.
because I worked hard to get that going, and it got past town meeting and Attorney General.
All right, thank
So-
you.
Don't put those down because it is 126 futured. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark, for those observations. I'm not sure anyone needs to respond to those, but okay, yes, sir.
Brian James, 29 Adams Road. I've lived here for 37 years. I've been here all my life. This building should be aesthetically pleasing to the town and fit in with the town. I know maybe it changes from year to year and with changing of the guards of, the different boards and stuff like that, but I know at some point the town did have a vision for new buildings being put in being aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
The Speedway now, which was Hess, when that building was originally built on Pond Street, it was meant to have, it was laid into the plans to build that building to look aesthetically pleasing, like it fits in. And so, I mean, at some point, there was a plan to keep the town look the way it is. I don't know what happened to it, where it went to the wayside, but maybe we should revisit that and look into having a town plan of how downtown should look, because, you know, it's looked the same for 30 years. So why are we gonna put in this big ugly building that doesn't look